Alrighty, so we've got a really interesting and amazing podcast set up for you guys today. Dante and I have been trying to plan this one for a little while, and dates and times and alignment hasn't always panned out, but today it has, and we're super excited. We are going to be chatting about long distance relationships like we normally do on this, but this time around we've got a beautiful soul who we both know from Clubhouse, where Dante and I first met, and our special guest comes to us from Montclair, New Jersey. So we are going to be joined by one of our good friends who we've known for a couple of years on the app. Neither of us have met her in person yet.
Who is this lady, babe? Who is she?
But we will. So we've got Donna, our friend Donna. Now, Donna is, she's many things. She is an amazing person, first and foremost. She's also a practitioner of laughter yoga, which is awesome. She has got the best energy. She also practices Koya, which is a practice for women to release their wild, free spirit. So that's going to be awesome too, to talk to her a little bit about that. And she's worked with a lot of people on relationships. She's run workshops in New York. She's got so much. So we're going to have a podcast today that is going to go all over the place. And also, too, she has been in several long distance relationships. So we're going to be dissecting all of that kind of stuff. So I'm ready to bring her in. I'm ready to say hello. You?
I'm ready.
Yeah. All right, let's go.
Oh, wait, hold on. You didn't ask me how I was doing.
I did. I said it at the beginning. I said, how are you, Dante?
That was like kind of like superficial.
Hang on, before we go,
like
how are you, Dante? How are you?
I'm actually, no, I'm just kidding. All right, let's bring Donna.
All right, let's go.
All right, here comes Donna. All right.
Donna.
Here's Donna.
Hello.
My best friend.
Thank you for the invitation. This should be quite fun, or it already started being fun in our rehearsal.
Exactly.
Our pre-show show.
Yeah.
How are you, Donna? Your energy is always vibrant, whether it's just through the audio app where we can hear only your voice on Clubhouse, or when you just talk like we have been this morning my time. Yeah, it's amazing. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Today here in Montclair, I taught a class that was half Koya and half laughter yoga. And so I had a group of about 8 or 10 people, and we're in this gorgeous space. And the Koya got people in moving and the energy up. And then laughter yoga just took over, where even the people in other rooms were like, we could hear it. It was great. So it's one of those things that when you teach it, you know, the energy comes back to you in such amazing ways. I'm like trying to figure out, am I still there?
Sorry about that.
Technology. It's like, where'd Donna go?
I hit the wrong button. I was trying to, anyway. You're good.
So that was phenomenal.
Hang on, let's try again. Let's do that. I'm going to flip it.
One here. So anyway, I'm gonna leave it alone.
I've never been on StreamYard, so you're light years ahead of me. So
I'll kind of highlight your video real quick, and it's
yeah. I think you can do it, and we can just work that out.
So while Dante's doing that, I studied with people like Allison Armstrong, who's taught people about relationships, and her first course teaches women about men's brains, which are so different than women's, right? Men aren't hairy versions of us. They're different priorities and different things, like opinions are to men, like feelings are to women. And so to get that, then all of a sudden that opens up some space. So
so when did you work with her on that?
Started Allison's work in 2004. So unfortunately, my first long distance relationship was in the late 90s. So that one missed out, but then it had benefits for the next one.
What was that like dating in the 90s? Because, you know, you didn't have yet, I think email was about, we had AOL, so you had Messenger, you had email.
And the beginnings of cell phones, but not, you know, flip phones, no pictures, no anything.
After
big phones PM, too, with an antenna that you pull out.
So that one was, I was dating someone who, it was really interesting. We had worked for the same company, and I remember supporting them because I had done some national support for this software company. And I remember hanging up going, he's so nice. It's a shame this one's married, like thinking that. And then 4 years later, he was divorced and we started dating. So it was one of those, you know, you didn't know what was going to happen. And
did you know his wife? Like out of curiosity.
No. Because he lived in Atlanta and I lived in New Jersey.
No, I was just curious. I was like, how did that?
That would be.
That's always interesting.
No, that would be rough. And they had challenges because they had problems conceiving. And it was one of those things that actually broke them apart because the stress of it, if you can imagine, IVF wasn't as where it is today. Between hormones and the frustrations, their marriage didn't make it.
Yeah.
So, we did old school things. He sent me a card every week from Bloom County that would show up on Saturdays, right? And that was one of the characteristics of our relationship. Like I would get a weekly, greeting card and things like that. Or, the phone calls were easy. There was no video calling. There were no iPhones, so no video calling. It was, a little old school.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
Okay, right. No, you go to it. I was going to say you knew him for 4 years before you got together in a relationship.
8 years in total. So then 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So so you basically knew him already, which is the attraction was quite easy on your part to build too, because you already had this sense of I like the guy I like the kind of person he is. How did that go from friendship, because you knew boundaries, to a relationship?
Okay, the good, bad, and the ugly. So I was going through a really tough time, and he had called on that Sunday, and we had the most amazing conversation. And then we were going on a team meeting type thing down in Atlanta, and I have family down there. So we got the chance to meet, and then, things started and got ignited. But to your point, Cindy, when you're friends, things are easy. You've got everything and going. And when I was a little younger, that's flip the title, and all of a sudden things change because your emotions are at a different level. Yes. And it presented some challenges because, you took things more personally. Or one time we were on a trip up in Boston, and I had arranged for all these nice things, and we were out with a bunch of the folks, and then I was going back to the hotel, and he stayed there. So even though we might have had each other's keys, I locked that top lock like, this wasn't going to happen. But here's the challenge. If I would have used my words to say, hey, this is what I'd like, but, sometimes we have to go through being, younger and stupid to learn from those situations.
So true. What were you going to ask? You had something on your mind.
So when you first met him, what was your thought? Was it platonic, work, friend, or was it like a thing, like instant?
No. It was never that, right? It was never like, oh, I would love to date him. He was just Joe. He was really smart. And in my old company, we were in tech before it was cool. Right. So it was like this little extension. And what was great is after 18 months, we would have this trip that was half day work, half day play. So that's where you got to know some of the people. And then we both went to another company where they plucked some of the experts. But yeah, I had never thought about that again after that one phone call. I remember it was on my office 37th floor. I'm like, and then, you dismiss it until more things transpired. Yeah, it was timing. It's one of those things that, if he, I kind of liken it to him being the knight in shining armor that helped me through a really tough emotional hurdle. And that will always have a special place in my heart.
Right.
That was that was later when y'all started dating then?
Yeah, that's how everything got started. Yep.
Okay. So y'all had that bond on that moment.
Yes.
Okay.
And you guys start talking. And then how does it turn into, okay, there's something here. Are we going to make this work? Because there's always got to be that kind of conversation when you are not in the same city of what is this and how is this going to work? Like, did you guys discuss that? Did you guys have a plan?
It was the 90s. Absolutely not. There was no plan. There's no cell phones. We're like, okay, now what? And we don't want to mess up the friendship. And that's I think one of the more profound losses when people break up. You know, that person who's become such an integral part of your life, they go away, right? Because either other boyfriends and girlfriends being jealous that they're talking to their ex, or the leftover feelings that one has versus the other.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, how are we going to try to make this work? And we knew that we both traveled a lot for work. And I mean, 1 year, I was gone almost 1 out of every 2 days. So, you know, I could, and those were in the days when you would stay over a weekend and your airfare would drop significantly. So I'm like, oh, I'll go visit my family in Atlanta. And then that would help make things a little bit easier. Or it was so funny. It was in July when everything started, and they sent him to New York for something. And I was just like, whoa, like, you know, it wasn't supposed to happen. So we had this, you know, fabulous, you know, 10 days together where, you know, that the magic period when everything's new and like everything glows and you're just in it, and other people can be like, wow, what's going on with you? Right? They can sense that something shifted.
Yeah.
So,
no,
and then,
great.
You know, it was like, what was going to work, or what did we want to do? And when you're dating long distance, or at least back then, right, you know, how do you balance everybody's emotions, right? I was probably one of the more serious people after his divorce. And, you know, I kind of jumped in. And I think as I was like, okay, where's this going? He was probably going in. So we had this interesting mix, or seeing each other, right? It's a plan that you have to make. Like, when are you going to see each other? And I call it cluster dating, right? Because when you date somebody long distance, boom, you have 5 days together, you have weeks together, and everybody can be amazing for that short period of time. But how are you going to be day in, day out?
Yeah, it's different.
And so we were in Hawaii because luckily both of us went to sales club. And then he was coming up to New York for my cousin's wedding. And my birthday was in the middle. And he's like, oh, we don't need to get together for your birthday. Okay. Oh, no, we don't. Like,
that was a mistake. That's a mistake on his part.
So I was like, yes, we do. Here's where John Gray's Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. You know, communicate what you need. So not only did I say, but then, and even the teachings from Allison, she's like, have a honey, what do I like folder, right? To give your partner a fighting chance to make you happy. Because unfortunately, we're not taught this early enough. Partners can't read our minds.
Exactly.
Right.
No matter how much we think that'll happen.
That's true.
So I said, and here's what I'd like. Make it a romantic weekend, you know, maybe. And okay, so this is the 90s. I'm like, make me a mixtape, right? And so you're on the radio and you're pressing play and record because there's no playlists, right?
Donna, what was on your mixtape? This is what we need to know now. I want to know what was on this mixtape in the 90s. Tell me who was on there.
It started with a great song from Blues Traveler, and there were so many different things. It was, and get this. So I just asked for that. What happens when I get to Atlanta?
Excuse.
Right? There are 32 of those cards because I was turning 32.
The other way.
Ceiling in his bedroom, right? The Bloom County cards. 32 roses on the nightstand. I love bath products. There was this huge basket of bath products.
My God.
He made 3 mixtapes, not only one.
So, he did it right. Okay.
Just what I had wanted. There was so much more that were just, I was like, what, you know, overwhelmed because like to do 3 mixtapes, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of time.
Double-sided.
Yes, double-sided, of course.
I love that not many people will know that if they're young listening to this. No one's going to know double-sided. Oh, that's hilarious. Oh, I love that, Donna. Awesome. And so relationship lasted how long?
That lasted 18 months.
Mm.
And
okay.
part of the challenge was I was the planner for when we'd get together.
Mm.
And after a while, I
It
was
was a little
like,
one way. It was a little one way then, it sounds like.
you know, he was a creature of habit. And I was like, okay, the next 3 months are up to you. And that didn't happen. And interestingly, today at lunch, I was with a friend and she had a long distance relationship, New Jersey and Michigan. And she's like, yeah, so one person was always planning. And that was such a big frustration, you know, so owning that responsibility would make things so much more. And the thing that happened, I had become his hair gel dealer, right? Because the people we worked with are like, do something about that hair, would you? And so I helped him with that. And so every year, like clockwork, I'd get my call around Christmas. Hey, can you send me some of the goo, right? Even after we broke up. And so we ended up, you know, breaking up, and his life ran into a big challenge. His mom had just passed, and then something tragic happened. But I went because another thing that happens when you're together so long is you get to know families. I was there for Thanksgiving. You know, he stopped by, he was by mine at Christmas. And so, you know, when he had lost his mom, I was like, okay, a big part of me is like, I'll show up for the people in my life when they're going through something, you know, whether there's somebody else, just to out of respect, because grief is a big deal. So, yeah. And so it was awkward when we saw each other at work. And especially when this other woman was flirting flagrantly in front of me with him. And I'm just like, you know, letting that go. Long story short on that one, Joe passed of pancreatic cancer a few years ago. And I had dinner with his wife on one of my visits to Atlanta. Wow. It was one of those things, like, he was very private. His dad x-rayed John F. Kennedy Jr. after he was shot. So, like, you can imagine the secrecy, a Navy man, all of that stuff. And so Joe being very private, if you got into the circle, you know, I knew what that took. And so after he passed, and I had reached out to Paula, and we had dinner together, which was absolutely lovely. So it was nice that we could share certain stories and enjoy that.
Did he go on to have children?
Never. No children, just his dogs.
Interesting. So was the distance that split y'all up, or like no real plan? You always felt like you were always kind of the one doing everything as far as
it was the distance, communication. You can imagine, without some of the tools that you guys have available now, was harder. And he was the one who's like, maybe we should think about moving. But I was already like feeling, you know, that I wasn't getting what I needed or the effort. And here's where owning that feeling, right? So I will share. I grew up in a household where alcoholism was present, right? So I learned about a program called Adult Children of Alcoholic, and I had some healing to do. So I wasn't able to talk about what my needs were way back when, because, you know, that wasn't the case. There was so much other attention on different things. So I didn't have that tool in my arsenal like I do now. So yeah, that was another contributing factor. Yeah. Communication is such a big thing. Whether it's love languages.
I'm glad you said that. I was thinking love languages.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I saw this really cute thing about the love languages that I shot a picture of that I wanted to talk about because I thought it was done so well. Okay, the 5 love languages. Acts of service is, I made you some tacos. Words of affirmation. Your tacos are delicious. Quality time. Let's go out for tacos. Receiving gifts. Here's a taco. And then physical touch. Let me hold you like a taco. I just love
And the
Taco
cynic,
is right down Dante's alley. He loves a good taco.
the cynic in me was like thinking of all the opposite things you could say to gaslight a person.
You know, and people owning their stuff too.
100%.
Yes.
And calling each other out on that. But, and, you know, so knowing your love language, or I listened to the book by the pastor who created that, and how different people, like I have a good friend, so I'm an acts of service person. And then there's a tie, and then there's one at the bottom, I think, words of affirmation. My friend's quality time. So I would buy these cute things and yeah, whatever. That was nice. But then when I found out hers is quality time and we started going for pedicures, woo, she was so happy. So to be able to make sure not only you're communicating the love in the way the person wants to receive it, as opposed to I'm giving you all this stuff, you know, and suffering like a victim, is 100%. Pretty integral.
And that's what, I agree with what you, that happens a lot. You know, you give so much of yourself and you just expect that it's going to be well received and that you're acknowledged, and then it doesn't happen. And I think a lot of people get caught in that experience, you know. And then you said, but he didn't get the experience of like the book that you were saying.
Oh, the training that I did with Allison, right?
Yes.
So talking about men's brains versus women's brains. And then also women, like one of our courses was about making sure the women fill up their tanks, because we sometimes give so much.
Yes.
How do we make sure that we're whole, right? Or asking for what we need, like I did with that John Gray example. And, you know, so fast forward 2010, personal ad time, right? Because, you know, now we have cell phones and we have the internet and we have all these things going on. And this man was in New York and it was supposed to be an interesting encounter. And what was supposed to be a weekend lasted 11 months.
So wait, slow down. Let me slow you down. So, you hold on. And it was supposed to be an interest. So what, y'all met online, I assume?
We did, while he was supposed to be in New York, and you know, it was supposed to just be this time together and
timing.
So how did y'all meet online though? We gotta slow it down. We gotta get.
We don't have to go into the exact.
That's something for the DL we can talk
about. Okay, my bad.
That'll be in the post show notes.
Okay, I got you. You don't want to share. That's fine. I didn't know if I was just thinking something like, you know, online dating or.
Yep, absolutely. Where you know people right now these days with online dating, they'll change their location when they're traveling, and then that's how.
Yeah, I mean, I've met, you know, I used to be on a couple, even before MySpace and Black Planet, and I met so many people all over the country, like, you know, and for all types of capacity. So it's like, you know, it definitely, it's different though. Like then it was like funner and cool in a certain, I think, group of people, whereas now it's kind of more
the way to do it.
So you get like as if you're just out in public. Like, you know, you get a little bit of everything, you know. Actually, I think it's diminished a little bit because you don't always, until you really engage a person, like face to face at least, which technology has, I think, made it easier to long distance date because you can look someone in the eye, you can talk to them, really get a real sense of their vibe. You know what I mean? So anyway, I interrupted you though, but yeah.
No, I was gonna say too before we go back. So you had your first long distance relationship, then you did this training with all those tools that you applied.
A bunch of stuff. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
there's a slew of them.
And the beauty about that is okay, you're smart, you're older, you're smarter and wiser, and you're equipped with stuff that you know is going to help you work, right?
Yeah.
So now you go into you find yourself in the next long distance relationship. You met a guy by chance, it happens to be online because we're going digital, and then it's meant to be a weekend thing.
He's from British Columbia, so he's in a whole other country.
Yeah. So and it's 11 months.
Wow. Yeah.
And different time zones, right? Because I'm on the East Coast, he's on Pacific time.
I was just thinking the British Columbia is on the West. Like, yeah.
We know about time zones.
Yeah, I'm from Seattle, so I know, like, you know, Vancouver, British Columbia.
Oh, he lived on Vancouver Island.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
He lived in Victoria.
That's a beautiful area up there. That's and then okay. So wow, so y'all connected and then planned for New
And
York.
it was supposed to be this, encounter that he changed his plane, and because the connection was so amazing. And the next thing you know, email, he's like, hey, I'm going to LA. Any chance you can meet me? I'll send you a ticket. Okay, first class ticket to LA. Twist my arm.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right.
And so,
All right. Fancy.
Interestingly, again, this time I was like, let me ask for something out of the gate, right? Because, the connection was fun and playful, but we're still getting to know each other. So I was like, I'd love to have some flowers when I get there. Again,
Where did you go?
Asking, and there was 24 long stem pink tall roses with this cute metally thing, and I'm like, whoa, because I grew up like, you were the Catholic household, you don't necessarily talk or ask for certain things, so that was incredible. And he had some sessions, and I had come out after work. And it worked because the time zone was in our favor. So we had another great time. And the next thing you know, he's like, well, I'm going to see how about we plan time together? So we did go to Seattle. So that was just our time where we took on a place and we planned what we wanted to do and created it. And before that happened, he's like, well, I'm supposed to go to Vegas next week. So, and that wasn't supposed to be there. And it just kind of evolved. I'm like, Vegas, okay. And so Vegas is Vegas, with all its fun and, whatever you can find. And so he was separated when we met, and, they had already filed for divorce, and he was also doing incredibly well with some MLM thing where that's why he came to New York. He was being honored for being like one of the top sales guys and such. And then, we ended up planning, like he came to New York after I had ankle surgery, and he was taking care of me. And that's something, right? So for some of us who are self-sufficient to say, hey, I need this, and to let someone, right? That takes that trust. And it was a lesson in, surrendering.
Vulnerability. Yeah.
And, the stuff that I had learned talked about men want to protect and provide, and they really just want to make us happy. And the interesting thing about what Allison teaches is she teaches for like a day and a half, and then they bring in a panel of men where you can ask questions. You write them on an index card, and the men answer the questions about what you just learned, but coming from men, because you couldn't believe it was as easy as if she was making it out. It's like, whoa. So that was incredible. And then we visited again in New York, and we planned some fun things as well. Like, we went to the Museum of Sex, or, you just, create these moments. And between it, we were talking, and messaging, and that stuff was great. And then, when you're that far away, cyber becomes very interesting as well, because you miss the intimacy from that level of connection.
Yeah, exactly.
Go
from the museum to the phone again. It's like, damn.
And then I took a leap, and I spent the summer on Vancouver Island, because it was one of those where if we were going to really see what was available, his divorce is being finalized. I planned 2 months to be there. And I throughout both of these relationships, I've been fortunate. Since the mid-90s, I've been working remotely, right? So I could go into the office if needed, or client sites, but then I could work from home, and home could be anywhere. And I had just started a new position that was really intense, where I was working with our lawyers and stuff. But I rented before Airbnb, right? I found a place and found a B&B where I was supposed to be there for July, and then I was going to stay with him in August. So it was great. I was in this little town called Ucluelet, which is on the west coast of Vancouver Island. It's like this fishing and surfing village that had like 2,300 people. Nice. And I had no car. You walked everywhere. It was incredibly cool. And it was, granted, a ways from where he was. So, he dropped me off. Okay, but life happens. And so here's another challenge. I land, we've been having these plans, and when you're dating long distance, there's so much anticipation about when you're going to see each other.
Oh, yeah.
Right. He and I were supposed to see each other in March that year. And whenever we were seeing each other, like clockwork, I would get a message, getting on the plane from him, blah, 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 blah. Can't wait to see you. We were going to a tasting dinner out in San Francisco at one of the vineyards where Francis Ford Coppola was, the owner. I didn't get my message. I'm like, Spidey sense goes up like, what's going on? Something's not happening. And then I got I have a stomach ache thing and I'm not going to be able to make it. And I'm like, okay, so now what?
During the 2 month stay?
Well, so this was right before it. So
wow.
Luckily I had a good friend and she took the ticket and that was fine. But that was like a little unstable. So the first night I get there, 2 months there, he's like, we can't take you to your Airbnb. His ex-wife was in the hospital and he needed to be local. And I was like, okay. Right. So you're like, because the divorce had already been final and you're just like, oh, that sucks. Right. Yeah. And so and it altered everything. And here's where communication's critical. I'm in a new job. I'm working with this lawyer guy. My brain is like getting fried. And like we had talked about before, when there's something in the way and, we're seeing beautiful things and he's got financial challenges going on, but he's not telling me. Between the divorce and that MLM not going well, he was over $80,000 in debt.
Ouch.
And so we became a little bit like roommates during that time period where it wasn't going well. So 3 weeks in, we're like, this isn't what we thought it was going to be at all.
The romance was gone.
There was no room for it to be there. Right? I couldn't say I'm busting my tail and I need some downtime or whatever, or he might have been expecting like as soon as I unplugged from work to go. But when your brain is like, and then he would never tell me what was going on because he didn't want me to think he was already making himself out as a bad guy, where that wasn't why we were together, right? It was the fun. It was the laughter. It was the connection. It was the silliness, right? Because when we were in Vegas, I lost a friend and he was so gracious during that period. I got the phone call. We're in Vegas and we were in Seattle and the phone's ringing at 10:30 at night. And my friend called and I'm like, I'm not answering that. It's 10:30. And then the phone rings again. And I pick it up. I go, this better be good. There's a man in my bed. And that's when I got the call that my friend had passed. And so he was incredibly gracious. So it's unfortunate that sometimes when we're stuck in our own heads, we don't say, I need help. Or we don't say, hey, can I have the space to just blurt all the stuff out? Because when we're stuck here, sometimes we make the smallest of things so big.
Huge. Yeah.
And I liken it to like, I'd love to do this with people and their insecurities, like have them in a garbage bag and keep putting things on. I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not that. Right. And then when you try to hug somebody, all that stuff's in the way.
Yeah. And
so we didn't have that. So I needed to find out what the hell I was going to do for August.
Wow.
Because my B&B guy's like, look, I've got a reservation for this week. So luckily I went off to the Gulf Islands, Dante, which was beautiful.
Okay.
For that week. And then I could come back. And then before I left, David said he'd drive me because it was a 4.5 hour ride. And there's an interesting thing that flips. When you got nothing to lose, you can, all bets are off. The vulnerability or like, oh no, you won't like me if, You're like, you already don't like me, so I can just come as I am. Or that level of authenticity came through. And before we knew it, we were getting closer to being back with ourselves again. Before I was supposed to leave. And so based on some of what I share with you, and then there was some other, essay and things like that in my past, my trust factor wasn't 100%. So he's like, so can I see, when can we see each other? I'm like, look, I took a hard line. My Eastern European roots came through. I said, until you make it to New York, there's no us, because what am I going to be able to, rely on? And he was the number 2 choice for a job at Google, and he didn't make it. And
ouch.
And then a couple of years later, I got the letter. I was the one that got away. And and we had an issue because I wanted to have kids and he didn't want to have kids, right? So that was another thing. Yeah, next thing you know, he's getting married to a woman who has 3 kids and he loved being a father.
That's how it happens. Yeah.
So
that's incredible. That's an incredible story.
Yeah, that's amazing. As you're telling me, the one thing I want to say real fast, I'm listening, and from the guy's perspective, like to go from being able to buy you a first class ticket to like being in that, and then to be depleted from that divorce, like energetically, and not really to have time to himself to replenish and regroup and come back full. That was a lot. That was a lot kind of to undertake. So he wasn't able to come to you complete. Like you said, until later on in that visit,
And, whether you were, driving, I don't know, for Uber or whatever, just,
Yeah.
I always say it's the who you are that matters versus the what.
That's the woman. That's the woman talking.
Easy for you to say.
Men, yeah. So as women, we're always like, but that doesn't matter. And as a man, like I'm learning as a man, it's different. It's like they're providers, right? So they've got to provide security, financial, like all of it,
medical,
safety, all of it, and it's like, and that plays huge on their mind. And the communication is the most important thing, because I'm telling you, without communication, nothing happens.
Yeah.
No, especially in a long distance relationship, because you're like, what the hell's going on? And because you didn't have answers, your mind's created so many stories.
He didn't want to go to the Vegas, LA, Hawaii guy to the, pulling the pockets upside down.
Yeah.
But to me, he was still David. But that's the thing that
it's always that battle. It's the battle. It's the battle. Yeah.
And he hadn't got to a point in his life where he could, hey, look, Donna, and I know you well enough to know that you would have empathized with him. You know what I mean? So,
but then I want to go back to he wanted children, you didn't like that.
No, I wanted children. He didn't.
Yeah, that's a big point. I got you.
He had the snip.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
Oh, he already had the snip before he had any.
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Snippy. All right.
That conversation in itself, like if I had have met someone when I didn't have children that said I don't want to have children, my desire to have children would have been so strong that would never have worked anyway. So
yeah.
It wouldn't have worked.
Those qualifying
the one that got away is in hindsight. That's really just that would never maybe have worked properly. I mean, unless
we didn't talk about it early enough on.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
And I don't know if you can relate, Cindy, but sometimes as women, we can be foolish and think, I'll change them.
Yeah, no. Maybe when I was 19, probably 100%, 21.
I'll fix you.
But I think that's one of the first things. You had a fixer. I had a changer, not a fixer, right? But I think that's for me, because I know how important that question is for women. I think I bring that up very early on, like yes on whatever it has to be, like it's important.
if I could share something that, I was taught is like, bring up your deal breakers early. Because then people can sort themselves out, as opposed to then all of a sudden you're heartbroken 6 months in because, they're never going to want to go to Tahiti or wherever you've got your heart set on.
Right.
And, the things that are important, you need to, have conversations about. So it's fun. I had talked about relationships with people who are plane rides away. And right now I've been chatting with someone, it's like 6 weeks. He's 3 hours away. He lives by Lois and we've never met yet. It's one of those things that people consider that even long distance. And I'm like, I've dated plane rides away. So, a drive shouldn't be that much of a challenge. But, there's timing, right? People's work schedules, they have different days off. So how do you make all the different factors work?
Yeah, exactly. And that's, and I think that, again, that's kind of like what I think about a long distance relationship is that there's certain factors that have to be kind of in place, that it shouldn't. And I attribute to someone, like you said, you were probably a little younger, so you were more willing to put yourself out there a little more. Whereas now it's like, no, you need to show me,
Also studying human development, right? We all like to look good, right? Or there was a comedian who said, let me put together like who you're going to like on the first date before you get to know the real me 4 months down the line.
Right, exactly.
Being responsible for our authenticity. Either one of you guys a fan of Ted Lasso?
I've heard the name. I don't know.
Looking like okay. So Ted Lasso is this show on Apple TV. Apple TV. It was about a soccer team.
Sports guy. Yeah.
There was a great scene where the coach says that he and his wife had a code word. So people say, "How are you?" You go, "Fine," and their code word was Oklahoma, and that means don't bullshit me. Tell me the straight truth. And so to be able to have that with someone where there's not going to be repercussions and you declare this communication, like, especially long distance, you usually when something's off, you feel that energy. But when you're behind a screen or you're on the phone, you don't always get that. So to be able to say, hey, let's use this word so that way you can tell me the straight scoop and it's okay. Or to broker it, like I need to, that was the other thing. Oh my gosh. Instill the fear of God. You tell the man in long distance, we need to talk.
We need to have a conversation.
The fear of death, when it could be something really simple, but because of all the history and the stories. So to be able to create a space where this was off or this sucked or, interestingly, another thing is men like to listen. What's the point? What's the problem? Because they also like to fix. And when I was working in New York, I was dating this gentleman, a wonderful widower, and something had happened in our office. And I got on the phone with him and I said, hey, I just need to tell you a story. I don't need you to fix it. And I don't need you to, analyze what's going on. I just need to talk. And sometimes as women, we have that outflow. And one of the women in our office had committed suicide. And somebody in the office got sent to find her. And I was so overwhelmed that I just needed to. And I remember talking to Tom. And he said, thank you for phrasing it that way. He goes, it was so easy to listen to you because he could set aside all the extra work that he was doing. So to have that space to recognize what somebody else needs and to just be like, you know what, you can just relax. And because so many times we're listening to respond as opposed to just receive the communication and be with it.
Yeah. I think, as I'm listening to you, I'm like it's like we just evolve, and then like into this version of ourselves. And I think the journey is really about learning about ourselves ultimately. And then, it makes it a lot easier to know what we need and how to go about to get it. That's like, as I'm listening to you, I'm like, okay, and I appreciate the vulnerability and you sharing,
Absolutely.
and I know a lot of people are gonna benefit from, your story. So, what was I gonna say? I had another question. Go ahead, Cindy.
Okay, so you're pro long distance relationships by the sound of it. You're not going to shy away
Yeah,
from a
100%.
long distance relationship. That's like, this is like Dante and I's relationship is my first long distance relationship. I'm so glad that it's this age that I'm at with the knowledge that I've acquired right now, because I don't think it would have been easy to do it, with insecure Cindy 20 years ago. That would not have probably been healthy. But what do you find is probably the most important thing? Like your communication, right? We've got that. That's foundational, right? So communication, without saying communication, what is the next important thing that you think people need to really have? Like it's got to be non-negotiable entering into a long relationship, because people want to make it work and they're willing to compromise things that go against what they want sometimes, and that's destined for failure 100% in my opinion. But there's got to be things that you've got to recommend people equip themselves before they enter into one.
And Donna, do you notice the dramatic zoom on her camera when she's telling you this? Like it's like zooming in. It's an intense like zoom in.
It is. It reads my eyes, so I'm going like this, and it's going.
And it zooms.
She's drawing. So you're going to put some music to that.
Yeah. Pianos and violins.
What do you think, Donna?
I think consistency is critical. Like in knowing what you're willing to bring, and that and have some of those non-negotiables to be there, right? Whether it's something silly, right? What if Dante, the next time you guys get together, and he like packs a shirt that's scented in his cologne, right, in your luggage as you're leaving, right? So then you have that little piece there, or that scent, or something from that perspective, or and the intentionality, because just like parents, right, people who are married who have children, and then the romance disappears because the kids come first. We all hear about happily ever after, the wedding, and but nobody talks about the relationship being work,
right?
And that conscious effort to be like, oh, I know Cindy needs this, or oh, you know what, Cindy was going through a tough time. Can I schedule a massage for her, or something that's going to be one of her favorite things, or oh, Dante's got something special. So what's something that can be a surprise? In talking to someone about this, they were talking about a long distance relationship where, you could have wine over Zoom or whatever. The partner scheduled somebody else to like set up the most amazing date for the one person that they had no idea was going to be available in their house.
Yeah.
So to have that room, because, sometimes you're either so scheduled, but also that little spontaneity. So, I think one of the benefits of having relationships as we get older is we know ourselves more.
Yes.
And those lines, and that's what we're willing to bring. And the commitment and the consistency, right? The commitment to us being like, opposed to letting some of the little BS things take you out.
Yeah.
And, depending on the context for the relationship, like when there's a future, then you're willing to tolerate this, that, or the other thing. Because sometimes long distance relationships, people are like sitting by the phone because I'm supposed to talk to you it's 11 o'clock my time already. Where the heck are you? And then they can get all upset.
Yeah, that's definitely can be an issue. Do you think that that there's an attractive, like based on maybe where you're at, or your what fit your needs at the time or desires, like that there was a certain comfort with the boundary of a long distance relationship, as in lieu to like when you meet someone at a mall or wherever in life in your everyday where you're at,
the convenience,
and then you have that convenience factor, and then there's almost that kind of that pressure to escalate, because you can see them at any time that you want. That's how I look at it. I feel like, oh man, they're like, like where do you go from talking on the phone all the time? I know this person well enough to, I really want it. That litmus test that a long distance relationship has, where you're gone, like you got to really commit to see this person. It's non-existent in a short-term relationship. And for some people, really care about intention and being with the right person, that those extra steps are attractive, consciously or subconsciously.
So with Joe, it was the connection and who he was, that was fine, and I was busy with work. With David, I was able to also kind of focus on work, and then we had the us time, right? And that was different, and you're in your bubble, right? That cluster date bubble, and so it served things when I was younger. And having gone through losing both my parents and things like that, the big missing was having that hand to hold, right? So now, I'm talking 3 hours by car as long distance, right, where, I was considering flying or what have you. And I think where people are at a different stage of life, then, is the immediate plans. Like, I want to have, a partner, because, some people say, get married, have separate houses, right? There's one couple in Hollywood where they have separate houses and they can have nights and dates at each other's house, but you don't have to be on top of each other and making each other crazy, which sometimes happens if you've got a Felix and an Oscar living with each other, or, when you're in that proximity, it's like, that old adage about the girl saying, there was an article years ago, and I think it was in Cosmo, and the girl's like, are you thinking about me? And the guy's like, he basically was thinking about his oil change, because she said, we met 3 months ago, and he's thinking of something completely different, and then she's taking it as disinterest.
Right.
So, over time, when things work and you're connected with that person, then considering like, how is it going to work, or what's going to be that option?
Right.
Would I've considered moving to Canada?
That was going to be my next question. Closing the gap, it has to come at some point, right? Or not?
Right.
Yeah, because they have incredible healthcare, right? But leaving my family was like a big consideration, and New York has that draw. But in the event that tomorrow, and unfortunately, David passed as well. So both of the men who I was involved with long distance passed. David was dancing at his brother's wedding with his new wife, and he had a heart attack.
Wow.
So, and I had no idea. And so I had sent him a note, because I was going to see Bette Midler on Broadway, and he had gotten tickets when we were going to Las Vegas. Because I said that was one of my dreams. The next, they appear in my inbox, and I'm like, da 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 da. And then I was in Costa Rica at a retreat, and all of a sudden we just got back from snorkeling, and everybody is in the pool, and they hear me just shriek. And it was a note from his wife saying, you sent a note to him, and must not have known David passed in October. And I lost it, because, that's not something you expect.
Right.
So, yeah. But so, considering, what's the plan? Is it something, and it's just like dating nowadays, right? It's fascinating how there are certain people who just want to have the date for fun right now, or do you want to build something?
Right.
And so to be clear about the intention and not take it personally.
Yeah.
In sales training way back when, this one teacher who I didn't like, but he said something, and I've used it a bunch of times, right? Some do, some don't, so what?
That's right.
Right. That if someone doesn't, right? David didn't want to have kids. Someone else who I connected with didn't want to have kids. And it was like heartbreaking for me at the time. Like, what do you I internalized it. Like, you didn't want to have kids with me. And that was, awful. But that was their commitment for their lives, because they wanted different paths. So, long story short, but, do you have some time just to really enjoy a person without qualifying it, right? Some people when women are younger, right, the reproductive years are a big deal, and what do they need, and are they ticking against the clock and what have you. So if you are involved at distance and that's an issue, then have the conversations, right? Certain people, harvest their eggs to make sure that they can deal with that accordingly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You got to have that conversation. You both have to be on the same page if it's moving, right? If it ends up just being
same intention too, same intention behind it.
Yeah.
And more people are, looking for fulfillment, where before people would have jobs and that was it. I'm going to work till I'm this and then retire, and then life ends and I just, sit in my rocking chair and waste away. Where my next door neighbor was 82 and vibrant, and she lived a life that was so much fun. Or you see the people like Mel Brooks living till 96. There's so much you can continue to do beyond just like, life is over. So